Okay, a little more trail education. Again, talking about water management for trails and trail watershed. The trail watershed is basically everything that can drain onto any given section of trail. So is there water coming down here in sheet flow? Is there water coming down this way in sheet flow that's reaching the trail? And the answer to the question is probably not. We got vegetation on those both sides. And the soil is so porous, that chances are very, very slim that we actually have any water coming from here into the trail tread watershed or the trail itself. If we had clay-based soils, if this was more open to the sky because of a forest fire or maybe a logging event, then there certainly could be increased chances that water is in fact coming from left or right. But that's not the case currently. So the trail tread watershed is predominantly the trail itself, and how far it's going to be from this location for us to see a functional drain that actually is pulling water off of the trail. And my guess is it's going to be a really long way. And the reason that I guess that is we see this big sand delta here. And then over here, we see a sand delta with a lot of gravelly rubble. And for that stuff to move, water's got to be honking. For it to move gravel, I mean, it's one thing for it to move sand, or a loamy soil, but for it to move this material, which are pretty good sized gravel bits, as you can see, for it to move that from on trail somewhere up in that neck of woods, water is honking. It is moving really fast. It's what I call the 2 V's of water, volume and velocity. And in this particular case, it's got both. The velocity is going to be in direct relationship to how steep the trail is, but also what the more volume, it increases the velocity. So we're going to turn around here. This is getting off here accidentally. Again, you can see a very large sediment, sandy deposit. Here's all our gravel material. So it's getting off here in what I call an accidental way, meaning that it just is getting off here. It's not some, water management structure that trail maintainers have built. But we're going to walk off trail and see how far this sediment load goes. And at this point in time, I am 20 feet off of the trail tread. And the biggest load obviously is right here because water is slowing down enough that it's dropping out that sediment load. But as I keep on walking back in this direction, I'm still seeing sediment load, and I can tell that by how loose the soil is, right? And the fact that it's on top of, the forest duff, that's telling me that this is a sediment load. So water is still moving fast enough to be carrying sediment. And then it hits this log right here and it slows down. And you see a very large deposit right here. Again, because it's hitting that log and it's slowing down. And looking back, we are now 40-ish feet off trail. Another big sediment deposit right here. But even though that log was slowing it down, I'm still seeing signs of a sediment load here, right? And a little bit back here, and that looks like that might be the tail end of it. I see forest duff over there. So we're 50 feet, 40, 50 feet off trail, and sediment is getting this far off trail. So that's telling me that we're going to have a long section of trail coming up where there's no water management. I'm guessing that it's going to have some steepness to it. Now, I should have prefaced this with a couple of things. One, there's no water course anywhere close to here. I did just cross Horse Creek a little while ago, but that was maybe a quarter mile back or something like that. So we're not right immediately near it. If we were, this would be super problematic. And then secondarily, we're in wilderness, and the trail management objective for this trail would certainly speak to how often it should be logged out. It would speak to how often tread and drainage should happen. My guess is that whatever those figures are, it probably doesn't receive that. In fact, it's obvious to me that this has not had any tread and drainage water management work in a long time. Again, a big sediment deposit right here of fairly large gravel, so water's got to be moving really fast with a lot of force to pick that stuff up and move it in some way. More of it here. Then the other issue is this is a class 2 trail. Forest Service has class 1 through class 5, 1 being hardly any development. You may not even be able to see the trail. Example of that might be, say, going up South Sister. That's probably a class 1, class 2. This is a class 2, meaning that it's, got some development for sure. But, it's not at the same level as class 3. Generally speaking, the only trail in wilderness that is a class 3 would be the PCT running through this area. You definitely are seeing some pretty serious erosion going on here. But PCT is class 3, so a little higher level of development for sure. Class 4 typically is going to be a gravel trail. Class 5 typically is going to be a paved trail. So say the Rimrock Trail leading out of Bend, heading up to the Welcome Center. That would be a class 5 trail. So this is a class 1, so it's intended to be lower development, but nonetheless, it's definitely got some pretty significant issues in terms of complete lack of water management. And we see how far below grade this trail is using my poles. You see that we're 12 to 18 inches below grade. So that is definitely a problem. This is the first little check dam thing. It did have a leadoff ditch that's right here that's completely filled with sticks. So that hasn't worked in a whole bunch of years. A really, really long time. We're picking up another big deposit of gravel. Again, this would be the first place that water's starting to slow down. But I mean, that's 1 inch or more in size, and that's pretty significant. So this thing is moving fast in a heavy rainstorm. We get a lot of our moisture in the form of snow, and that's a slow release as it melts out. And that's not, more than likely that's not what's causing this, because that just, snow melt just is moving too slow. We see another drainage feature right here that has failed. It filled in. Water's definitely not getting off there. We've been quite a ways from that really large deposit. Here's another old drainage feature here. A little bit of water is getting off here, because I do see, again, some of that same sandy and then some of that same gravel, but it's certainly not capturing, by any stretch of the imagination, the majority of water is jumping past that. As noted, this is pretty steep. It is fall line. Again, here's another little lead off that's doing nothing. Fall line trails, really hard to manage water off of. Looks like we're coming up onto a plateau. Water is getting off of here, at least some of it. A little bit of it is jumping right in that crack there. I can see signs that water is escaping. And the reason for that is because water is coming in a straight line and it hits this water bar, and you're turning water at a radical angle, and water doesn't like to be turned, especially when it has a lot of power. And so sometimes it will just jump over what you have intended for it to, whatever water structure you have intended for it to pull water off. So that's probably the end of that section, because I'm now going slightly downhill. So water's definitely not getting past this point and going on down, but I definitely again see signs over here to my left. I mean, I hope this is visible on the video, but another really large sandy deposit over here. So we probably have exactly the same thing coming up in terms of a long run with no water management, no functional. And again, here's another big gravel deposit. That's telling me that we definitely have the same situation moving up ahead here. So this trail is, as I said, it is fall line, and in some ways even worse, because it was located in the lowest point within the landscape. It's not much of a natural depression here, but there is, in that we can see that, this is uphill over here, and it's been kind of uphill over here. Again, that concept of trail tread watershed is a lot of water from those sides getting over here on trail. Not really. It's mainly the trail itself. But yeah, this was a very poorly located trail. It breaks every rule that we have in a trail design, sustainable trail design concept. Big gravel deposit right here on the top of this water bar. So water's getting off there, but yeah, so definitely not a good design. And these trails that are not well designed, they're super hard to maintain. They're super hard to manage water off of. Yeah, and long term, this trail will have pretty significant, soil loss and pretty significant impact on the natural resources. Again, fortunately, no water close by, no lakes, no streams, no creeks. So the sediment load's not reaching, but it still is not a good situation on this particular trail. This is Horse Lake Trail between Horse Creek Trail and Red Hill Trail. And looking forward, we will have a junction with the PCT shortly. All right, peace out.